book of Matthew, chapter 23. I want to mention something about these Pharisees and scribes. Jesus hates violence. So the more you are on a person and you trying to get your point of view across, it will escalate to an innocent, oh, I got to get my thought to you. But if you're that type of person in your heart and you keep going on to a person with your thoughts and how they should be in your way, this is the majority of murderers in jail that are there for murder. It's got to be their way. It escalates to a full-blown murder. And that's what they did to Jesus. And he tried to warn them, and he still tries to warn everyone. Like when he had me over this great lake of fire in hell, it's not the great lake of fire, but it was that big, and pulled up one of the people, the violence in that person is still always there because they chose not to clean it up, not to stop their wrongful way of thinking and turn it around to a rightful way of thinking, meaning God's way of thinking. They always think that that situation is about them. Even women are like that. They'll look at a person to the point of where the jealousy comes out. So then the other jealousy is coming out. Some people, they are actually evil and not even influenced by a demon. Because did Jesus say anyway that the Pharisees were possessed? No, this is their true nature. And it went from a simple thought to an escalation. Look at it. They were on them. And then by the time they get to the end, they even gave up God for Caesar to be their king, which we're going to be reading about shortly, and killed God, knowing that that was God. That's pride. It's the same thing Satan had. They wanted to be like God. They wanted their ways heard. And this is what happens to the majority of everyone in jail. Chapter 23. I lost my glasses. I have macular degeneration in both eyes. I have 2 blood clots dead right in my retina. So if I have to go over words sometimes, sorry. Then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to the disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works. For they say, and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. They're lazy. Everyone has to do it. Pay them, uplift them like they're God. But all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their phylacteries broad and large. The borders of their garments, they love the best places at feast, the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But you do not be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Christ, and you are all brethren. Do not call anyone on earth your father. Now, I agree with that because the priests do that in the Catholic faith. They're not my father. For one is your Father, he who is in heaven, and do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, the Christ. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. I mean, you will be put in your place. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go into yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. Remember what I told about the long prayers? Therefore you will receive greater condemnation. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel land and sea to win one proselyte. And when he is won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he's obligated to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever swears by altar is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift of the Son on it, he is obligated to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater the gift, the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore he who swears by the altar swears by it, and by all things on it. He who swears by the temple swears by it, and him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God, and by whom that sits on it. The Catholic priest, I prefer the way they teach things, but I just call them priests. I won't call them my father. So this is no way insulting what they're teaching. They shouldn't be teaching that. You should call them father. So I could go on about every type of Baptist, all down the line. Everyone's in error. But the Catholics, to me, teach it better. But instead of them, I do it myself now. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. They never practice justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you. See, they're picking on him. Nitpickers. You know nitpickers? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup of a dish, but inside they are full of exhortation and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first cleanse the inside of the cup and dish, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and uncleanliness. Even so you also outwardly appear righteous to men. Isn't that like some of our politicians? Y'all following them like gods, and you call yourself a Christian, and you God in here says you're not to. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness, hypocrisy. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not be partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. They even say that they wouldn't do that, and they're going to do it right to Jesus, God himself, and everyone else. Therefore you are witnesses against yourself that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore indeed I send you prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on the earth, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah. Oh my God, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more, till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, do you not see all the things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Now this is where we get into the book of Revelations. And Jesus answered and said to them, this is what we have to take heed to also. Take heed that no one deceive you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. This is everything he showed me in my dreams and visions. Everything. They will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. I was beheaded. And I was shown that too. And you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Look at, people hate me now for reading this to you. I mean, it's that weird. And then many will be offended, and they are offended, will betray one another and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. I showed you what he said, who the false prophets are in the churches. They're all the black churches with black ceilings, black walls, black stages, all the guitars, and he calls them the Church of Satan. Then many false prophets will rise up, deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. People will be burnt out because of this and say, the heck with it, I don't even want to deal with God anymore. This is what it will come to. People just say, I just can't deal with it. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. So he is mentioning Daniel. He's mentioning Isaiah. So you should take this, Daniel and Isaiah, and put that all with the book of Revelations also. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. And we know who that is. At the end, I seen Satan sitting on a throne. Physically sitting on a throne with his full body and his full intactness. And the false prophet is B.O. So they go hand in hand, and the woman that they speak about that is drunk on the wine of murdering, you don't know what they do underground. It's disgusting. It is like a factory of death to children. And she does that underground. KH. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath, For then there will be a great, here we go, the great tribulation is when that occurs. So once all this stuff happens, know that we're in the great tribulation. Such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. He's got a shortened time for us. I was shown that. Because if he didn't, that's how powerful Satan's mind is. And then you people say, oh, I have power over the devil. I have power over the devil. Didn't God say that he had to, in the book of Revelations, give Satan his time on earth with us? And it's going to be all of him. His soul enters back into his own body, but not before it enters the false prophet, which is B.O. We'll see that. But then toward the very end, when Satan sits on his throne, and he is huge. I mean, I shown you in a video when Michael cast him out. So that will be a future event, him thrown out of the heavens. And him splatting on the ground, and it shook the ground. And I think that's when a great earthquake happens. And then he goes to get his soul out of that bottomless pit. Okay? Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible. Remember what he said to them when he dissolved that tree? He said that we'll be able to do that. So these things are going to be, people are going to be doing it, just like in Egypt with Pharaoh and stuff with Moses. And people are going to believe it and say, oh, look at me. Did Jesus ever came and show off and do a show off to the disciples and through the book of Matthew? He's not a show off. He teaches the word of his Father and his will and your way to get to heaven. If they're not teaching you like this, walk away from that strangeness. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he's in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. This is talking about at the end of days, it's going to be like that. Something happens to the atmosphere from all of what they're calling UFOs and stuff. But this does mention the 3 days of darkened. In those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. And I was shown Jesus standing over the earth, showing me that exact same thing. And what is occurring, the whole earth is black and blood red. Thick black and blood red. I was shown that by Jesus Christ himself. And I put that in a video about illumination of consciousness. Okay. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heaven, and then all tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn this parable from a fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near as the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. Is Jesus talking about a rapture? I'm going to put everyone to sleep, or you're going to be driving in your car before all this badness comes and you're just going to be taken up. What they're seeing is not the bad that happened to them. They're seeing themselves rise up from the bad thing that happened. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as in the days of Noah were also, will the coming of the Son of Man be. For in the days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. When that flood came, it came a flood. They didn't know. You don't know, a flood, it was there. That's normally what happens. It's raining, and then all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, you're gone, you're swiped away. And it'll be just like that. I don't know the day or hour, but I can go by what he gave me with the people and the dreams and visions he gave me. And he did not know until the flood came and took them all away. Also will the coming of Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, and one other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. That means people will be just gone. I was shown that there will be a peopleless earth soon. So it'll be a sporadic people just leaving. Not where he's like, bing, you're coming home, bing, you're coming home. Something happens to where they just die. They just die. And then one is still left, and that one's dead. They die. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken, and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken. And that's talking about your spiritual body. His house to be broken into by demons. Therefore you are also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at the hour you do not expect. And I think a lot of this taking and going with the 3 days of darkness, what I've seen of demons shredding people apart, this very much could be that also. So we have all our answers here. So it's lining up with everything that he has showed me. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his house, to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly I say to you, that he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and at the hour that he is not aware of, and will cut him in two, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of the teeth. That means God will take people out because they're that evil. It says it right there. He's taking people out on judgment. He showed me, look at Beyonce. He's taking people, evil people, out. And the just and the unjust too. Then the kingdom of heaven shall be linked to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. That means they didn't take God anywhere with them. They're just about their own way, and then, well, maybe later on I'll get back into him. That's what that's about. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. Who's the oil? God. He lights you, ignites you. But while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. People's like, oh, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And people are just impatient. Didn't he say here to have patience when we read this? And at midnight a cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, no, lest there should not be enough for us and you, but go rather to those who sell and buy for yourselves. Didn't Jesus say it would be better for you to buy from him? It's the same thing. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, assuredly, I say to you, I do not know you. Now, I want you to read all of this over again for yourself. I am reading this, not a rehearsed like pastors do. I'm putting my thoughts into it. This is why it's called a Bible study. Okay? I encourage you to reread everything. I'm just putting what I am trying to line up with even my dreams and visions with him, which I never question him. So I'm just trying to find, the time we're in and then take it back to Revelations. But I already told you we're probably there with real soon. After the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, surely I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and made another 5 talents. And likewise he who had received 2 gained 2 more. But he who had received 1 went and dug it in the ground, and hid his Lord's money. When you hide God's word and you don't spread it to people, you're like that guy who just dug it in the ground. And who are you serving? After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. There's judgment. What have you done? So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents besides them. His Lord said, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who had received 2 talents, came to him and said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents. That would be like 2 more souls. They even tried to get 2 more souls for Jesus. I've gained 2 more souls besides them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. That's like someone who's scared to, or embarrassed to talk about God. Burying it. But they got the gift from him, but they're burying it. They're afraid to show it. Then he who received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. But the Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. Therefore take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. That means the gifts that God had stored up for you in heaven, and because you are evil, it will be given to someone else. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away, and cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. Seems to me he became an unbeliever. He was told the word of God, and then buried himself away and forgot God. And if you're into outer darkness, you became not of God. I mean, that's in all ways. Praising him, praying to him. You're in the outer darkness. You're more atheist, self all about you. I mean, it says it right there. It explains it perfectly. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of the teeth. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Remember, every time I talk about a dream or a vision, or I'm taking up that left hand, I'm going to tell you what, if you're with that left hand, you are jacked up. And that is even an understatement. In your torment, it is going to be triple tormented. I can't explain it. I can't explain that. You seen what he did to B.O. with his left hand? Right in his stomach? It solidified everything from the top of his arms to his waist. Because right where he hit him in the stomach, where's your rivers of living water come from? God. And then he hit him on the with his left hand on his right hip, solidified it. Then he hit him on his left hip, left hip, and solidified it. And then he rolled him in the ball. He had no bones left. And then threw him off that side of the mountain and cast him out. And blood it was graphic. Blood splattered. It looked like a horrible blob of blood. That's all that remained of that person. I'm just saying. Oh my God. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry? This is people that are all full of themselves. Well, look, God, just like he did when he stood before God, when Jesus tried to give B.O. a chance with the kingdom. He says, do you serve my kingdom? And you could go look that up before, I don't want to get really into that. But he even gave him a chance. And he said, I have my own kingdom, and laughed in his face. That's a self-righteous person. A demon does not even do that. Not even Satan. To Jesus, they fear him. And I know why they fear him. Because I fear him. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. Then he will also say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire, preparing for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. This is happening right now. No one cares about anyone but themselves. Then they also will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in a prison and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, Assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteousness into eternal life. Now it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings that he said to his disciples, You know that after 2 days is the Passover, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Then the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders of the people assembled at the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and plotted to take Jesus by trickery and kill him. Now, speaking of this, kill him, at the end of the days, our government, I was shown these weapons, these laser beams that are for Jesus, and he showed me, he stood right above there and showed me these weapons that they have already with one mind to try to laser beam Jesus. They're going to try to kill him again. We know that's impossible, but I was shown what he did with that. That laser beam is wide. No one knows about this weapon. I don't care on any. This is something specifically for Jesus Christ. The Nazarene is what they call him. But they said, Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people. And when Jesus was in Bethany at the house of Simeon the leper, a woman came to him having an alabaster flask of very costly fragrant oil, and she poured it on his head. And he sat at the temple. But when his disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, Why this waste? For the fragrant oil might have been sold for such more and given to the poor. But when Jesus was aware of it, he said to them, Why do you trouble the woman? For she has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, but me you do not have always. For in pouring this fragrant oil on my body, she did it for my burial. Assuredly, I say to you, whoever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told as a memorial to her. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you? And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. So from that time he sought opportunities to betray him. Plotting. You people will be plotting against your own family member, your own child, your child against you. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying to him, Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat Passover? And he said, Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, The teacher says, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. So the disciples did as Jesus had directed him, and they prepared the Passover. When evening had come, he sat down with the 12. Now as they were eating, he said, Assuredly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and each of them began to say to him, Lord, is it I? He answered and said, He who dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me. The Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. Then Judas, who was betraying him, answered and said, Rabbi, is it I? And he said to him, You have said it. Because he already knew it. That's why he said it. He thought that he was fooling Jesus, who knows everything right before him, and knowing that he was God. A lot of you will do that too. And they were eating. Jesus took bread, blessed, took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Then he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, "Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for the remissions of sin. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, "All of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." Isn't this kind of like what's going on, huh? But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered and said to him, "Even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble." How many people say, "Oh, I'll die for you, God"? And a lot won't. A lot won't. Because in that time, them people were violent and ruthless. When I was there, I was scared even in that time frame. The fear of it all is just overwhelming, and it's way worse going to be now. Jesus said to him, "Assuredly, I say to you that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he says that about us. And you say, "Oh no, Lord, I won't deny you." People will. Peter said to him, "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowfully and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to my death. Stay here and watch with me." He went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as your will." And that's going to happen to us. This is what he told me, that we are all right now like him in the Garden of Gethsemane. So it already happened to Jesus, so now we are going to walk these steps. This is why I like the Catholic faith, because they go through this over and over and over to prepare their mind for this day. They really do. Just because, "Oh, I don't want to go to that church because they call the priest a father." Sometimes you got to get over it, because look at some of them churches I showed you. You want to learn something, sometimes you got to just bypass that and learn something. And then go learn it yourself. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, "What? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." They were tired, worn down. Like you get stressed out where you get worn down. Again, a second time he went away and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me, unless I drink it, your will be done." And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them, went away again, and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." So now we could say this about us. Are we still sleeping? Jesus is asking every one of us that's listening to this, and are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed. But he's saying to you, you're being betrayed by your own governments and the one world. You know what? Into the hands of sinners. That's what they are. Rise, let us Begone, see, my betrayer is at hand. And while he was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, with a great multitude, with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying, Whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him. Immediately he went up to Jesus and said, Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. But Jesus said to him, Friend, why have you come? Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and took him. And suddenly one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword, struck the servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear. When Jesus came and told me that the tribulation has begun, he was counseling about you can't be violent, you can't hit people, you can't do all this evil stuff, even think it, speak it, or even mouth it with no words. And then he screamed out at the very end, don't even cut off somebody's ear. I woke up out of that dream. It took me a week to recover from God's anger. Put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Or do not think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels. How then could the scriptures be fulfilled that this must happen thus? I don't think you guys really realize what Jesus could have did to the planet, right? He could have dissolved the whole earth and people on it and just been done with all this. But because he loves us so much, he's willing for everyone to just go through a trial to try to get to the next person so that they go home. So this is where we have to push all our soul down and think about the person, the next person. Okay? In that hour Jesus said to the multitudes, Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to take me? I sat daily with you, teaching in the temple, and you did not seize me. But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Jesus went willingly when they came. This is how we're going to have to be. He went willingly to what they were going to do. And that'll be a lot of us. But that calmness will be put on you. Then the disciples forsook him and fled. And those who had laid hold of Jesus, you're going to be with people say, oh, I'm a Christian, I'm with you, we're going to work together. And then when they come, and it's going to happen, those will run away from you. Fear, we can't have fear. It's going to happen. And those who had laid hold of Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance to the high priest's courtyard, and he went in and sat with the servants to see the end. Peter really, truly loved Jesus immensely. Now the chief priests and the elders and all the council sought false testimony against Jesus to put him to death. They are going to lie on us too, to put us to death. They're going to lie, but found none. Even though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. But at last 2 false witnesses came forward and said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said to him, do you answer nothing? What is it these men testify against you? But Jesus kept silent. And the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, It is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and the coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the priest tore his clothes, saying, He has spoken blasphemy. What further need do we have of witnesses? Look now, you have heard his blasphemy. What do you think? They answered and said, He is deserving of death. Then they spat in his face and beat him, and others struck him with the palms of their hands, saying, Prophesy to us, Christ. See, the one who prophesied to us, Christ, who is the one who struck you? Now Peter sat outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, saying, You also were with Jesus of Galilee. But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you are saying. And when he had gone out to the gateway, another girl saw him, and said to those who were there, This fellow also was with Jesus of Nazareth. That's how popular Jesus was. They knew everyone that was around him, the multitudes of people that followed him around. But again, he denied with the oath, I do not know this man. And a little later, those who stood by came up and said to Peter, Surely you also are one of them, for your speech betrays you. Then he began to curse and swear, saying, I do not know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the word of Jesus, who had said to him, Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. So he went out and wept bitterly. When morning came, all of the chief priests and elders of the people plotted against Jesus to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was remorseful and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? You see to it. Then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. But the chief priests looked the silver pieces and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, because they are the price of blood. They're still being lawful, but doing unlawful stuff to God, and they knew he was God. These people are nuts. They're not even nuts. They're evil. They are like Satan. Are you kidding me? And they consulted together and brought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what was spoken in Jeremiah the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they of the children of Israel priced, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said to him, It is as you say. And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how many things they testify against you? But he answered him not one word. Sometimes you just got to be quiet. And people nowadays, they just don't know how to shut their mouths. So that the governor marveled greatly. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to releasing to the multitude one prisoner whom they wished, and at that time they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, Whom do you want me to release you to, Barabbas, or Jesus, who is called Christ? For he knew that he had handed him over because of envy. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said to them, Which of these 2 of you want me to release to you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, What then shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They all said to him, Let him be crucified. Then the governor said, Why, what evil has he done? But they cried out all the more, saying, Let him be crucified. They're building this anger up. So what you think in your mind and your heart, it comes all up. And boy, I'll tell you what, probably after that, they wanted, these people are evil. Then the governor said, it's going to happen to us. Then the governor said, why? What evil has he done? But he cried out all the more, saying, let him be crucified. When Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was rising, it was rising. I mean, this is like a horde of people. I mean, look at how many followed him. And then now you have them and the other. So the Pharisees are trying to confuse everyone to say that, to believe them. Remember what he talked about? The Pharisees putting the fake leaven into the believers that Jesus just had believe in him. This is what's going on, you guys. It is a nightmare. I don't think I could bear if he took me in time and showed me that. I'm serious. But rather that a tumult was rising, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it. And all the people answered and said, his blood be on us and on our children. They cursed their own children, and trust me, God cursed them too. Unless they know about this and went to God to get a curse lift off them. Then he was released, Barabbas, to them, and went to the... Then he was... My computer's doing something funny, sorry. Then he released Barabbas to them, and when he was scourged, Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him, and they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put on it his head. Now, when I had my open visions of Jesus, I'm going to show you what it really looked like. It's not a skinny one. People say, oh, it's a skinny one. I screenshotted one for you to see because he appeared to me on his cross and I seen what he looked like, and it was scary. I mean, it was violent what happened to him. It wasn't no little thorn of crowns. And people think, oh, it wasn't that tiny. They tortured him ruthlessly. Hold on a moment. Okay, if you want to see how thick this crown of thorns was on him, it was that thick. It was no thin crown that they stuck on him. They were Romans. They were torturers. That was their profession. They did that daily. That's what it looked like. And his arms stretched out. It was so stretched, it didn't slope like this. And it was in his hands. The nails were in his hands. And the blood was just unreal. His hair was dripping. And everyone wants to say that, oh, he carried a beam. No, he carried the cross. A whole thick beamed cross that was huge. When I seen him on the cross, above him was like 3 feet. And even when his hands were, I mean, he was stretched. And on the ends, that was like if you can measure it, it was like equally, they put him on there equally with like this much overhang. And at the bottom where his feet was, that was in the ground, that was like a 3 and something foot difference. So imagine how big that cross was. He carried that whole cross like that. The blood was dripping. And when I say dripping, now you know why he's going to return with his blood garment where it looks like he's dipped in blood, because it's an understatement how they even show the blood. The cross had so much blood coming down on it, even the back of it, blood. And when you turn around, I was so scared when he appeared, and I'm trying, I'm like, just, oh my God, you feel that pathetic as a human being that I couldn't look at him. And then when I seen his eye, his left eye, when he shows that left eye, he was telling me it's going to be time for, I mean, it was like bulged. They beat him that bad. It was bulged. You don't know. You could barely see him. Period. Period. And then he just appeared to me last week in the room like that again. So he's basically saying, you know, look, tell everyone that I went through this torture for you. For you. As any other prophet or dreamer that they claim to be, telling you the step-by-step crap that happened and that's going on. Don't fear. He went through all that. And it becomes over. And then you have to deal with this no more. Everyone, I don't want to die. But if you see what's to come, it's better to go in the beginning. That's all I got to say about that. When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and he reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Then they spat on him, and they took the reed and struck him on the head. And I mean with that crown of thorns that thick on him. And when they had mocked him and took the robe off him, put his own clothes on him, and led him away to be crucified. Now as they came out, they found a man, a Cyrene, Simon, by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. That's how big it is. He needed someone else to carry it. And he was so bloody that was just rubbing in those wounds, rubbing in. And when they had come to a place called Golgotha, and it is to say place of a skull, they gave him sour wine mingled with gall to drink. But when he had tasted it, he would not drink. Because remember what he said, he won't drink until he's home with us. Then they crucified him and divided his garments, casting lots that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Sitting down, they kept watch over him there, and they put up over his head the accusation written against him, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Then the two robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads and saying, You who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from that cross. Likewise the chief priests, also mocking with the scribes and elders, said, He saved others. Himself he cannot save. If he is the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in God. Let him deliver him now, if he will have him. For he said, I am the Son of God. Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour, there was darkness over all the land. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of those who stood there, when they heard that, said, This man is calling for Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and offered it to him to drink. The rest said, Let him alone. Let us see if Elijah will come to save him. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn into two from top to bottom. The earth quaked and the rocks were split. It's the same thing that's going to happen at the end of the days. This earth is going to quake and split. We're going to be walking around like drunkards. It's going to be that shaking by God himself. And the graves were open, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. And there's a theologian that wrote about this, and that they were seeing this. Yes. So when the centurion and those with him were regarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, "Truly this was the Son of God." And many women who also followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, they were looking on from afar, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joses, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Now when evening had come, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given to him. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in clean linen cloth and laid it in his new tomb, which he had thrown out of the rock, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and departed. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary sitting opposite the tomb. On the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate, saying, "Sir, we remember while he was alive, while he was still alive, how that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise.'" They're still, while he's not there, still not stopping. It was never enough. Now they just want. Therefore, command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away. They still don't want people to believe that this even happened. They're still doing it to this day. They know, but they don't want you to know, because they want to be God's chosen over even God's son, because they think that they can be equivalent to God's Son, who is God himself. This is what they don't get. You were created by them. Ugh. And say to the people, "He has risen from the dead, so the last deception will be worse than the first." Pilate said to them, "You have a guard. Go your way. Make it as secure as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and setting the guard. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb, and behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. His countenance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. And that's how Jesus appears. I mean, the angels appear that way too. Jesus, I mean, they glow like that. You know the difference. But Satan will try to appear as a light, but it's quite different. And the guard shook for fear of him, and behold, like dead men, and came like dead men. But the angel answered and said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come see the place where the Lord lay, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And indeed, he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you." So they went out quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to bring his disciples word. And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, "Rejoice." So they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brethren to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." Now while they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priest all the things that had happened. When they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, "Tell them his disciples came at night and stole them away," still being paid off to lie, "while we slept. As if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure." So they took the money and did as they were instructed. and this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had appointed for them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen. I think you should, read it for yourself too. I'm just putting what I've been shown through my life, with things that most people won't believe. So, have a nice day.